Some tractors are built to plow fields, but a few were built to confuse the entire world. These weren't just machines. They were engineering puzzles on wheels, packed with so many gears, levers, wires, hydraulic mazes, and over-engineered features that even their own creators sometimes struggled to explain them. From tractors that required a pilot's license to operate, to machines so complicated that farmers abandoned them in frustration. These are the 10 most stupidly complex tractors ever made. The machines that prove sometimes more technology does not mean more useful. Number 1. Versatile 1080. The Versatile 1080 remains one of the strangest, most unbelievably complex tractors ever manufactured. A machine that proved sometimes more power can actually create more problems. At a time when manufacturers were trying to push horsepower limits without increasing engine size, versatile engineers came up with a shockingly bold idea. Why not put 2 engines in a single tractor? The result was the 1080, a machine equipped with 2 separate diesel engines, each powering its own axle, and both required to work in perfect harmony. On paper, it looked like a genius solution to achieve maximum pulling power, but in the real world, it quickly became a mechanical nightmare for farmers and mechanics alike. The biggest issue was synchronization. Each engine had its own throttle, its own fuel supply, its own cooling system, and its own transmission section. If one engine delivered even slightly more or less torque than the other, the tractor didn't drive straight. Farmers reported the machine shaking, jerking, drifting sideways, or simply bogging down unexpectedly. Imagine trying to control 2 tractors at the same time, because that's exactly what operating the Versatile 1080 felt like. Every morning started with a ritual of adjusting linkages, matching RPMs, checking belts, and hoping both engines would behave throughout the day. Maintenance was equally painful. Every problem was doubled. 2 water pumps, 2 alternators, 2 radiators, 2 fuel pumps, 2 injection systems, and 2 of almost everything. Even transmission issues became twice as complicated because both drivetrains had to engage at the same moment or risk catastrophic failure. The concept was ahead of its time, but the execution created a labyrinth of mechanical chaos. The Versatile 1080 remains a legend today, not because of what it achieved, but because of how incredibly over-engineered it was, an icon of complexity that showed the world exactly why tractors should stick to one engine. Number 2. Farmall 2+2. The Anteater. Few tractors in history have captured attention the way the Farmall 2+2 series did. Nicknamed the Anteater due to its long snout-like front end, the 2+2 was a bold attempt by International Harvester to reinvent what row crop and articulated tractors could be. The company wanted a 4WD machine that still handled like a traditional row crop tractor, and to achieve that, they created a truly bizarre design. The engine was mounted far forward on a long chassis, while the cab sat on the rear half along with the primary drivetrain. The tractor hinged in the middle, giving it articulation steering, something not normally seen on machines of its size in that era. But this design created a unique set of problems. The long drive shaft that ran through the articulation joint had to be perfectly aligned at all times. Any wear in the joint would create vibration, backlash, or delayed steering response. Operators often complained that the tractor hunted or drifted unpredictably across the field, especially when the articulation joint started to loosen with age. The forward weight distribution, while intended to improve traction, made the tractor feel unbalanced, particularly during transport or when using rear-mounted implements. Maintenance was equally quirky. Servicing anything near the articulation joint required threading tools through narrow openings or removing entire panels. Even simple tasks like replacing belts or working on the front axle demanded disassembly due to how tightly everything was packed into the long nose. Despite all this complexity, the 2+2 developed a huge cult following. Some farmers loved its uniqueness while others swore they'd never touch one again. It was innovative, strange, and unnecessarily complicated, earning its place as one of the most over-engineered tractors ever built. Number 3. Allis-Chalmers Model U Rear Steer. The Allis-Chalmers Model U rear steer tractor is one of the most puzzling engineering decisions in tractor history. At a time when manufacturers were refining front-wheel steering for maximum stability, Allis-Chalmers decided to flip the concept entirely. They designed a tractor that steered from the rear, leaving the front wheels fixed and allowing the back end to swing around the operator. It sounded clever in the engineering room. Rear steering offered tighter turning for row crop cultivation, but the practical reality was dramatically different. Rear steering created serious stability problems. Because the rear wheels controlled the direction of travel, any quick movement of the steering wheel caused the tractor to pivot sharply, often more aggressively than the operator intended. This made the tractor highly unpredictable at high speeds, extremely unstable on slopes, and sensitive to even minor terrain changes. Operators described the experience as driving a runaway shopping cart, because the rear end constantly tried to swing out of alignment, especially when pulling heavy implements. The mechanical system itself was overly complex. The steering linkage, normally simple on a front-steer tractor, became a maze of rods, joints, and angles that had to be perfectly calibrated. Even small wear in a joint could cause exaggerated steering behavior, making the tractor behave erratically. Repairs required disassembling large portions of the rear frame, and accessing the linkage was often more difficult than it should have been. Although the rear steer concept promised improved agility, the real-world handling issues were so severe that the design never gained mainstream acceptance. Today, the rear steer Model U remains a fascinating case of engineering experimentation gone too far. A clever idea that simply didn't belong on a field tractor. Number 4. Case IH 9300 Series Quadtrac. The Case IH Quadtrac is considered one of the most capable tractors in the world today, but its early 9300 series models were infamous for being incredibly complex, unpredictable, and nearly impossible to repair without electronic expertise. When Case IH introduced the Quadtrac concept, it was revolutionary. 4 independent rubber tracks, articulation steering, advanced hydraulics, and one of the earliest full electronic systems built into a heavy tractor. But farmers of the 1990s weren't ready for what this machine demanded. These early Quadtracs relied heavily on multiple onboard computers, interconnected sensors, and electronic control modules. Everything from steering articulation to fuel delivery to hydraulic output was monitored electronically. While this gave the tractor excellent performance on paper, the technology was not yet mature. Dust, vibration, cold temperatures, and moisture frequently caused sensor failures and electrical shorts. A single faulty sensor could throw the tractor into limp mode or shut it down entirely, leaving farmers stranded midfield. Operators described the tractor as smart but sensitive, because the machine constantly complained through error codes, many of which even dealerships didn't fully understand at that time. The articulation system alone used multiple sensors to coordinate the steering response. If one sensor misread the angle, the tractor could become unresponsive or extremely slow to turn. The hydraulic systems were equally intricate, using early electronic modulation that was prone to glitches. Mechanics quickly realized that fixing a Quadtrac required both tools and a laptop, something unheard of in farming back then. The tractor's complexity paved the way for modern precision agriculture, but the early models were undeniably overcomplicated. They marked the transition from mechanical tractors to electronic ones, and that transition was anything but smooth. Number 5. Mercedes-Benz Trac 1800. Mercedes-Benz is known for producing luxurious, technologically advanced vehicles, but when they attempted to bring that philosophy into farming machinery with the Trac 1800, the result was one of the most unnecessarily complex tractors ever built. Unlike the simple, rugged tractors most farmers preferred, the Trac 1800 came loaded with automotive-style sophistication, advanced suspension systems, four-wheel independent braking, a high-speed multi-range gearbox, and a cabin designed more like a Mercedes SUV than a farm tractor. The complexity started with the suspension. Instead of the typical solid axle setup used in most tractors, the Trac 1800 used a fully engineered system designed for comfort and high-speed travel. This suspension included multiple linkages, bushings, and hydraulic dampers, each requiring precise maintenance and calibration. A single worn joint could throw off the entire system, causing vibration or uneven wheel alignment. This was great for smooth road driving but completely unnecessary for farm fields. The gearbox was another source of headaches. Mercedes engineers designed a sophisticated transmission with multiple synchronized ranges, intended to give the tractor both highway-level speed and field-level torque. But this created a transmission that was far more delicate than a typical farm tractor gearbox. Internal components wore out faster than expected, and repairs were time-consuming and expensive. The cab, filled with electronics, switches, and advanced climate systems, was comfortable but fragile. Sensors failed, wiring corroded, and controls were overly sensitive. The machine felt more like a luxury automobile than a rugged agricultural workhorse, and farmers found themselves paying luxury car repair costs on a tractor. The Mercedes Trac 1800 is remembered as a technological wonder that simply didn't belong in farming. It was beautiful, innovative, and too complex for daily field work, earning its place among the most over-engineered tractors ever created. Number 6. Steiger KP525 Panther Power Shift. The Steiger KP525, often known by farmers as the Panther Power Shift, was one of the most ambitious and overly complicated tractors ever to come from Steiger. Built during the era when manufacturers were experimenting with adapting road-going heavy truck technology to agriculture, the KP525 was essentially a hybrid between a semi-truck drivetrain and a giant 4WD field tractor. Engineers hoped this fusion would create a powerful, smoother operating machine. Instead, it became one of the most maintenance-heavy and mechanically confusing tractors of its time. The heart of the KP525's complexity lay in its power shift transmission, a system borrowed from highway truck technology and adapted awkwardly for farming use. Unlike typical tractor transmissions that rely on rugged mechanical ranges and simple hydraulics, the KP525 used a multi-stage shifting system with electronically controlled valves, clutches, and synchronizers. These components demanded extremely precise oil pressure and calibration. Even a small contamination of hydraulic fluid or a minor sensor misreading could lead to sudden gear slipping, delayed shifting, or complete transmission lockup. Farmers often found themselves crawling under the machine to troubleshoot solenoids or pressure lines rather than actually working the fields. The electronic components added even more headaches. For a tractor of its era, the KP525 was overloaded with early diagnostic circuits, pressure sensors, and electrical monitoring units. These electronics, not yet durable enough for harsh agricultural environments, frequently failed due to dust, vibration, and weather exposure. As a result, operators often dealt with false warning lights, unresponsive gear selectors, or safety lockouts preventing the tractor from moving at all. Mechanically, the KP525 was overbuilt and under-tested. Its semi-truck style drivetrain was powerful but not ideal for slow, heavy pulling. The cooling system struggled to keep up under sustained field load, leading to overheating issues. Accessing components required removing heavy panels, and even routine maintenance like changing filters took more time than on traditional tractors. The Steiger KP525 remains a strange chapter in tractor history, a machine that attempted to merge two industries but ended up being too sophisticated, too delicate, and too complex for the field. It was a tractor designed with ambition, executed with experimentation, and remembered for the engineering chaos it created. Number 7. Big Bud 525/50. The Big Bud brand is often associated with raw power and simplicity, but the 525/50 model broke that stereotype entirely. This machine, produced in an era where electronics and advanced hydraulics were still developing, combined massive horsepower with a surprisingly complicated articulation and steering system. Unlike the legendary Big Bud 747 known for straightforward engineering, the 525/50 was filled with components that demanded constant adjustment, calibration, and maintenance. The heart of the tractor was a massive 19-liter diesel engine that delivered huge torque, but the real complexity lay in the articulation system. Big tractors normally rely on basic hydraulic cylinders for steering, but the 525/50 used a high-pressure hydraulic control setup with multiple valves, sensors, and pressure regulators. This meant that the articulation didn't simply turn. It responded to pressure values that had to be kept in perfect balance. If pressure dropped or one valve failed to open at the right moment, the tractor would turn unevenly, jerk violently, or respond sluggishly. Then there was the cooling system. Designed to support the huge engine, it used multiple radiators, interconnected coolant lines, and high-capacity fans. Unfortunately, these components were buried deep within the frame, making routine maintenance extremely difficult. Cleaning radiators or checking coolant flow required partial disassembly of the hood and side panels. Operators described the machine as hot-blooded, often running hotter than expected and demanding attention. Hydraulics for the implements were equally complicated. With multiple pumps and selector valves, a small failure could reduce hydraulic pressure across the entire system. The 525/50 was undeniably strong, powerful, and capable of pulling enormous equipment, but keeping it working smoothly was an ongoing battle against over-engineering. It remains one of the few big buds that farmers respect for its power yet fear for its complexity. Number 8. Lamborghini DL25 Prototype. Before Lamborghini became a supercar icon, it was a tractor manufacturer. And during this early era, they produced one of the most unnecessarily sophisticated prototypes ever built, the Lamborghini DL25. This tractor looked stunning, with sleek Italian design cues and impressive technical ambitions. It was meant to revolutionize small to medium farming operations by offering a machine that combined elegance, precision, and high-level engineering. Instead, it became infamous for being temperamental, fragile, and far too complex for real farming conditions. One of the most troublesome components was the multi-stage clutch system. Instead of using a simple single-plate clutch like most tractors, the DL25 employed a multi-stage setup with synchronized discs meant to offer smoother transitions between gears and PTO operation. In theory, this offered better control. In practice, it caused nothing but problems. The clutch slipped easily, required exact adjustment, and wore out faster than expected. Farmers often complained that even minor misalignment rendered the tractor undrivable. The transmission was equally over-engineered. With synchronized ranges and multiple shift linkages, it offered excellent driving comfort, but only when perfectly tuned. Over time, the linkages wore unevenly, causing grinding, sticking, or misshifting. Mechanics had to manually reset linkage tension and alignment, a job that demanded experience and time. Perhaps the strangest issue was the tractor's sensitivity to vibration. The frame, though beautifully constructed, transmitted engine resonance through various control linkages, causing unpredictable behavior in the PTO or hydraulic levers. Lamborghini engineers wanted performance and elegance, but they created a machine that required constant attention and behaved poorly under heavy field conditions. The DL25 is remembered today not as a successful tractor, but as an example of what happens when luxury engineering collides with rugged agricultural demands, overbuilt, oversensitive, and overly complicated. Number 9. Zetor Crystal 8011. The Zetor Crystal 8011 was one of the most innovative tractors of its time, especially in Europe. It introduced a fully integrated cabin with better comfort, noise reduction, and climate control features that were rare in affordable tractors. However, the innovation came with an overwhelming amount of complexity. Zetor engineers built an advanced cooling and ventilation system that worked brilliantly when new but became a nightmare to maintain as the years passed. The cab's climate control system used multiple fans, a network of ducts, and a pressurized airflow design intended to keep the interior dust-free. This required several heat exchangers and a unique routing of air through the dashboard, ceiling, and side panels. While this made the cab comfortable, it also meant that even a small clog, dust buildup, or fan failure led to decreased airflow or temperature imbalance. Repairs were difficult because the ducts were hidden behind panels that required tedious disassembly. Then came the electrical system, a web of wires, connectors, switches, and early electronic controls. These components weren't fully sealed, so over time moisture and corrosion caused widespread failures. Lights flickered, sensors stopped working, and the dashboard indicators often gave incorrect readings. Farmers described the wiring as a bowl of spaghetti, and mechanics needed hours to trace even a simple short circuit. Despite being strong and reliable mechanically, the Zetor Crystal 8011's auxiliary systems were too advanced for the era. Its electronics and cooling systems were overcomplicated, fragile, and difficult to maintain in rugged agricultural environments. This combination of innovation and excessive complexity cemented its reputation as one of the most technically confusing tractors ever made. Number 10. Belarus 5022. Belarus tractors are famous for being tough, simple, and easy to repair. But the Belarus 5022 broke all those rules completely. Designed as a high-horsepower flagship model, the 5022 was built using military-grade engineering principles. It featured a massive V12 diesel engine, overbuilt hydraulics, and a complex transmission system packed with multiple ranges and sub-ranges. While the tractor was impressively strong, it was far too complicated for the average farmer to operate or maintain. The V12 engine itself was a beast, huge, heavy, and powerful, but also extremely demanding. It required strict maintenance schedules, careful temperature management, and precision tuning. Even experienced mechanics found it intimidating due to its size and tightly packed components. Changing filters or adjusting injectors was labor-intensive and required special tools. The transmission was even more complex. Instead of a straightforward range and gear setup, the 5022 used an advanced multi-stage gearbox intended to handle the V12's torque. This gearbox had many moving parts and synchronization points, making it sensitive to wear and difficult to repair. Operators often struggled to remember the correct shifting patterns, especially since the tractor behaved differently under load. The hydraulic system added another layer of complexity. It included numerous pressure regulators, safety valves, and interlocks designed to prevent accidental overload. However, these safety systems often malfunctioned, stopping the tractor from lifting even moderate implements unless everything was perfectly calibrated. A single pressure sensor failure could halt the entire lifting system. The Belarus 5022 was undeniably strong, but it crossed the line into military-style over-engineering. Farmers wanted simplicity and durability, what Belarus was known for, but instead received a tractor that demanded high-level mechanical expertise. It remains one of the most unnecessarily complex tractors ever built. And that's the list. 10 tractors, so stupidly complex they made even the smartest farmers scratch their heads. Some of these machines were ahead of their time. Some were engineering experiments gone wrong. And some were just proof that overthinking a simple job can create a mechanical nightmare. But one thing's for sure, these tractors will be remembered, not for how well they worked, but for how spectacularly complicated they were. If you enjoyed this deep dive into farming's most bizarre creations, make sure to check out our other videos/articles where we explore the weirdest, wildest, and most unbelievable machines ever built. Until next time, keep your engines simple and your tractors even simpler.